Dr. Ariana Howitt is the clinical director for On Our Sleeves. On Our Sleeves is a national movement empowered to break stigmas associated with children's mental health, as no family should struggle alone on this journey, very similar to the Youth Mental Health Project. Ariana is originally from Venezuela, and her Latin background fuels her work of inclusion and equity in our society. Dr. Howitt works in pediatric primary care, where she serves primarily Latino and Somali immigrant children. She is also a clinical assistant professor at pediatrics in the Department of Pediatric Psychology and Neuropsychology at Nationwide Children's Hospital and The Ohio State University. On top of all of her huge career successes, she is a proud mom of a toddler and enjoys family time, dancing, and Ohio State football. I'm a Penn Stater, but it's fine.
Uh-oh.
Today, we will be talking about stress in children and, more importantly, the difference between normal stress and too much stress. We will also learn more about the different types of anxiety in children, and she will have you all create individual game plans for yourself. Without further ado, I introduce Dr. Ariana Howitt.
Hello, everyone. It is awesome to be here today. As Lauren mentioned, please chat away anything you have as I talk. I'm happy to answer questions as we go. And you'll also see a poll question pop up, and I'll stop at some periods to ask some questions from you. So let me start by sharing my screen here. And we will go from there. All right. Everyone see that? The presentation? Can you see, Lauren, the slides?
Yes, the presentation looks great.
Okay. So a little bit about On Our Sleeves before I jump in, and I'm opening the chat here. Do you guys see the chat if I open it? Is that distracting? Or am I the only one seeing it?
I think you're the only one that can see your chat.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So the On Our Sleeves mission is to provide every community in the United States with free evidence-informed resources necessary for breaking child mental health stigmas and educating families and advocates. So really what we want to do is, when parents, caregivers, teachers, any adult in a child's life is looking for ways to support a child and turning to Google for answers, looking up some resources, they can find us. And it is information that is based on science and our experts at Nationwide Children's Hospital. So some of what you can find on our website is here. We have mental fitness challenges, we have guides for sleep or healthy habits, and then we try and also stay up to date with any current things happening. Like we recently put out a article on how to talk to children about current events because of what's going on in Ukraine. So all the content you will find is talking to adults of ways to support the children.
Right. So our first question is, what is stress and what is normal for children?
So with stress, it's an important question. It is important for us to define it because stress is something we all feel, and it's not just during negative or hard situations. It happens with big life changes. So thinking about starting a new school year, moving to a new house, anything like that, new siblings, that can all cause stress. So think about it as anything that comes up in our lives. And yes, sometimes it feels bad, and we will talk about more of that in a second. But I also like to highlight that stress is helpful too. A lot of times in therapy, people come to me and they want help to not feel certain emotions, but emotions are there to help us, and stress is one of those. It motivates us, it helps us prepare, work hard. So if I'm stressed about passing a test at school, that's what's going to motivate me to study. If I'm afraid or feeling nervous, if someone asks me to do something dangerous, that's going to keep me from going through with it. So it's protective. It's kind of what keeps me waking up in the morning instead of turning my alarm off and being late for work, right? We have to feel some of that to get us going. And stress, nerves, fears, they start at a very early age, as soon as infancy. We're talking about that stranger danger that some babies can show because they can tell the differences between the familiar faces and the unfamiliar faces. At toddlers, you start seeing more of that fear of separating from caregivers around ages 1 to 4. Once you're school age, you start to be aware of the real dangers of the world, but you don't understand the reality or probability of whether it'll occur to you or someone else. And so you start to really show those fears about storms, fires, accidents, burglars, illnesses. And then once we get into the adolescent years, kids can start to worry about social acceptance, their personal success, or issues in society. That's something we hear a lot from adolescents right now, that they're worried about kind of the big picture things, which adults tend to think like that's not something kids worry about, but they do. They are worrying about it, and it's coming up a lot, especially with the pandemic. So I want to hear from you. I would love to hear a time where stress was helpful for you or your child, a place where you just feel those normal day-to-day stressors that get you going. And as people think, maybe Lauren, you can share
Yeah,
some.
I was just thinking of an example. I think definitely
Mm.
the stress of, I was thinking traveling for me in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I recently took a trip to Sedona. I took myself on a little like road trip for February, for Valentine's Day. I gave myself a gift. And the stress of doing a solo trip on your own, it causes a lot of stress and anxiety because you're
Oh,
going
yeah.
through it alone. But I think the helpful stress was um, that it was a challenge, but I was really proud of myself at the end of the trip that I was able to kind of navigate through those stressors. And even though
Mhm.
it wasn't always easy, it was beyond worth it, and like rejuvenated me more than I could have expected. Um, and yeah, I think so. That was something that was definitely a helpful stressor.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you saying that reminds me of a really good point, which is when we navigate good stressors,
Mm.
we learn to cope with the harder stressors, right? So a trip is fun, but stressful.
Yeah.
Now you've learned tools and strategies for when something harder comes along. And
Hmm.
I'm seeing here in the chat, other people say yes, traveling. I'm seeing a lot of meeting deadlines, assignments, exams, right? It pushes us to study and plan.
Hmm.
I see here natural disaster, to become aware of safety. That's a great one, right? If we didn't feel stress or fear, then we would see the Weather Channel warning and just be like, whatever. And we have to take steps to keep ourselves safe.
Hmm.
Safe.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It's as if you're preparing yourself for the next
Mm-hmm.
stressful or hard situation. And it kind of takes the mystery out of, can I do it? You've done it before. It might be a little different, but you were able to get through it. So it may take the stress
Mm-hmm.
away just a little bit.
And I'm seeing, for our children and adolescents, I'm seeing here my son started cross country, wanted to be better, so he practiced. Yeah, kids that are involved in extracurriculars, it's what motivates them to keep trying and keep practicing.
Beautiful. And you can all continue to add on to the chat. We're going to continue on with Ariana's presentation. But please feel free. We'd love to keep hearing your experiences with healthy, helpful stressors. All right, so my next question. So now that we've talked about that there are helpful, healthy stressors out there, so what are the signs of too much stress? So there's a difference between regular, normal stress and when there's just too much stress? What are the signs of those?
Right, right. We can go from, like I mentioned, the normal day-to-day things that bring stress, but sometimes it does become too much. And so for children and adolescents, what we're looking for is behavior changes. For the really young ones that maybe don't have language, you're going to start to see the tantrums, the throwing things, not listening, kind of those meltdowns. For the older kiddos, you may see more of that irritability, um, not wanting to do things. Avoidance is a big part of stress and anxiety, is like, I just rather withdraw and go hide away than to face the thing that's stressing me. Um, so look for those behavior changes, look for the changes in the mood. And then a lot of what happens is that it's hard to focus, it's hard to sleep, maybe even appetite changes. And this is something I see in clinic often because I work in primary care, where families will come in asking, does my kid have ADHD? They can't focus, they can't motivate themselves. But really, when we get to talking, it's not ADHD, it's stress. And because of the pandemic, we're experiencing that a lot right now, is that kids are stressed out and it's impacting their ability to motivate themselves and focus on schoolwork. And then we also see stress in the body because our mind and our body are connected. So some children will describe stress as pain, headaches, stomach aches. Again, something I see very, very much in our primary care clinics is families coming to see their doctor because their kid is expressing tummy aches, or sometimes even vomiting and being sent home to school, but then there's no virus causing the vomiting. And some children are more likely to feel stress or nervous than others, talking about both the normal, but then also when it becomes too much, like the point that it becomes too much is different for everyone. So we all feel stress, it's normal. Some of us can tolerate it a little bit more than others. And there's many factors behind that. It can be biological factors, so genetic factors that make some of us able to tolerate more or less, environmental factors, which impact kids, like parenting styles or any stressful or traumatic childhood experiences. And then, of course, the psychological factors, the personality style or the coping tools. And so I want to get the chat going again. So I'm going to share a little case study or an example of something I see frequently, and I want to hear everyone's thoughts. So if we have a 10-year-old, so think around fifth grade, typically gets good grades, has many friends at school, no major changes in home or family environment. And parent starts noticing that the 10-year-old is complaining of belly aches almost every morning. It's hard to eat breakfast. I'm just not hungry. And you notice, along with these belly aches, all of a sudden they're not sleeping well sometimes. And this is a story I see often. Everything's going well, but all of a sudden this pain starts happening. So I'd like to hear in the chat kind of what things would you start looking out for? What questions are you asking yourself? What patterns or behaviors are you looking for here? So someone's jumping way ahead. I love it. Is it happening on the weekends or day off? Yes.
What tests are happening at school? Friend
Mhm.
trouble?
Friend in trouble? Is it just in the morning? How often are they happening? Does it
Yeah,
stop functioning or does it go away after they arrive at school? Yes, that's
right.
wonderful. Eating
Start monitoring
habits.
at home and at school.
hmm
Mm.
And I love that this one points out eating habits, sleep habits, collaborating with school staff, because sometimes it is just our physical health and maybe we need to take care of our body, right?
Changes in family system.
Well, yep. So you all are on it. Um, we want to look for those patterns. Is it happening um, only during the weekdays and not on weekends and holidays? We want to ask, is it happening right before a big test? We want to find out, is something going on with a friend? I saw someone mention that. The school ride, that's a really good question. Could there be something going on the bus? Bullying I see on here. These are all wonderful. And we're kind of skipping. So we notice the patterns. Now we want to engage in conversation to what questions do you ask? And these are all great. You start asking your 10-year-old, something going on at school. Is something bothering you? If it's the bus, I've noticed, you can just point out, I've noticed you're getting tummy aches a lot. Is there something bothering you? Is there something on your mind? Is something stressing you? And someone noted on here asking about sleep. That's excellent too.
It's so important, the idea of patterns. I think even growing up, it's hard to figure out what consistencies are in your life that may be causing a change in your body, but an outside eye can really help
Mhm.
maybe see what that is.
Mhm.
Um, Especially with
Absolutely.
certain friends or certain people that they're surrounded by, and maybe it's triggering that moment, or if they are joining an activity of some kind, and every time they go to that event, there's some sort of change in their body,
Right.
or their demeanor. I think that's
Yeah.
great
And I'm seeing
observations.
here the questions for I statements because Eileen mentioned not why, but I statements to prevent shutdown. And yes, so I statements is an excellent communication strategy, which means just saying, I am noticing that you're having a bellyache on the weekdays and not on the weekends. Is something going on? I am, you could say I am worried, like expressing your emotion, your patterns versus saying, why is this happening? In therapy, we talk about using what versus why. So why do you have a tummy ache can make a kid defensive. Why are you stressing versus what's going on? What could be bothering you right now? What is on your mind? So that those are kind of tips and strategies to help, like Eileen said, the child not shut down. Yes, and Lori is jumping ahead to oh, and I think that one may have just gone to me. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to jump to the next ones, which are going to get more into these strategies.
Beautiful. All right, I think I have another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, my next question. Now that we've gone through all of the signs of stressors, what it can look like physically, emotionally, the changes that our children face, now it's taking that next step of how can we help our children talk about and manage their stress?
Yes, and Eileen is jumping in right away with a wonderful, let's
Mm,
figure this out together, right? We want to work with the children, especially the older they get, they're going to have ideas. They know what's going on. And so we want to work with them and not just talk at them, which is important. So when you all get the slides for today, you are also going to get a link to an area in the Honor Sleeves website where you can download this anxiety game plan. It also includes a few other worksheets to help children with stress. Um, and so I'm going to guide you today on how to fill this out with your child and give you some ideas. So the first part, when we're dealing with stress or anxiety, it's to help the child recognize it. And someone said in the chat earlier that children don't often identify what they're feeling. They just feel because it it's, it's hard for adults, let alone a child, figuring out why am I feeling the way I'm feeling. All right. So the first question we have on here is sometimes I feel anxious when. So figuring out with the child, what are the triggers? Then we talk about what does the body feel, and then we talk about the thoughts. So how do we get the child to share with us when they are feeling anxious? Everyone's already sharing excellent conversation tips in the chat. So I've noticed you seem stressed lately. Is there something going on? Is there something on your mind? We talked about the what questions, we talked about the I statements. And then I think I saw someone also talking about the listening piece, right? We don't want to ask a lot of follow-up questions because the child is just going to shut down. So there is a strategy we call reflective listening, which is just repeating back what you hear. So maybe you say, I've noticed you seem stressed lately. Is there something going on? And the child says, yeah, I'm not, there's something happening with the kids at school. As a caregiver, you almost want to jump in right away and say, oh, what's happening? Who did something, right? Like you're protective, your questions want to jump in, but that's going to make the child shut down. And so instead of asking questions, you say, oh, okay, so things are not going well with your friends. And you just repeat it. And that way the child has a way of saying, yep, this is what's going on. And so it just keeps the conversation going the way they want it to go versus attacking them with questions.
Sorry to jump in really quick. Just to confirm with everybody, we will be sending the game plan to all of you, as well as the recording of the webinar within a day or two. So Lisa just added that in the chat, just so you all know everything will be available right after the webinar.
And then, we want to normalize when kids start sharing, we want to make sure that it's pleasant for them, the interaction with you. We want to make sure that it's rewarding so that they can keep coming back. Because if we shut down or invalidate in any way, they won't want to share again. And so, I understand what it's like to be scared. I've felt scared too. Tell me more about what's making you nervous right now. Trying not to dismiss their feeling, um, not saying things like, you'll be fine, or leading them to anxiety. Are you worried about passing the test today? Versus just saying, how are you feeling today? I'm seeing, even if you don't agree or understand, Eileen in the chat. Yeah. So even a big thing for children and adolescents is that what's important to them for adults maybe not as important, right? So a kid may be like so upset about something that a friend said. And to us, it's like, oh, whatever. I've heard parents say like, just talk to someone else or it'll be fine. You guys will get over it. And so kind of dismissing. And so we have to put ourselves in the child brain and remember that that's really important to them. So I like what Eileen said in the chat of even if we don't agree or understand, we want to validate because everyone has a right to their feeling. And so starting these conversations allows us to understand how the kid is feeling, allows us to start noticing the thoughts that they're having. And then you can start talking with them about how their body feels. So this will be part of those printouts I'm talking about in the link that will be shared to you, is helping the kid identify how the body feels when they're nervous. And this is where we teach them emotion words, we teach them stress, nervous, anxiety, and anger, sadness. And then you start talking about where do you feel. So on the right here, you see a drawing that I made in therapy once where the kid was describing knots in their tummy, tension in their shoulders, their fists were clenched, and then their legs felt shaky when they were afraid. And so this allows even the young kids to start noticing the emotion in the moment, which is a really difficult strategy for a lot of people, especially kids. And once kids can label the emotion with words, notice it in their body, then they're better able to be in control of their reactions. So then we move to part 2 of the anxiety plan, which is what do I do with it? I've started to notice what my triggers are, what my body feels, what's going through my head, but now what? So the first 2 things you see on here is where the people I can talk to, and I can make sure my parents know. So social relationships is a really important aspect of resiliency, coping with stress. There was actually a study from the CDC just released last Thursday on how adolescents are doing with the pandemic and all the disruptions to their life. And one of the things that came up in the CDC survey and report is that social relationships were one of the most important protective factors in what kids have been through with the pandemic. So we want to help our children build healthy relationships with adults and peers in their lives. We want consistency. We want to be there for them and listen and really foster those connections to the people in their schools, because they spend a lot of time in school, the people in the community, the people in the family, and their friends. So that is why in the action plan, you see these are the people I can talk to and how can I talk to my parent, because that is very, very important for resiliency and protective factors. And here at the bottom, you also see when I feel anxious, this is what my parents can do to help me feel calm. And I saw someone on the chat say, we work together, right? So one of the most important questions you can ask your child when having these conversations is, what do you need from me? How can I help you? And we have that space for what can my parents do? And I'm reading here in the chat.
Yeah, Eileen had a very interesting story to share.
Mm-hmm. Scribbled about 5 different colors in my head, gave them an emotion. Yes, ADHD. Eileen, I love that you're sharing this, because a lot of the times when kids have a diagnosis, they go together. You may have an anxiety disorder and ADHD. And with ADHD, it's hard to slow down and stay straight, as you mentioned. And so it's hard, like all of the emotions happen at once, and it's hard to then figure out what's happening, because again, we can't really cope if we don't first identify. So I'm glad that you had that aha moment. That's important. So we've identified, we've talked to the children about people that can help, how can I help as a parent, and then we help them with their body and mind, how to calm their body and mind. So one of the strategies you probably hear about all the time, but it is because there is so much evidence to show it works, is belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. I have done this through the use of biofeedback, which is when you get hooked to monitors and it measures your heart rate, your breathing, and just taking 5 belly breaths can really slow everything down. It works really well. And so what that means is you see the kid kind of sitting with hand on the chest, hand on the belly. It means that instead of taking a deep breath with our chest, filling up our lungs, we want to pretend there's a balloon in our belly, and we take that deep breath and fill up our belly, and then slowly breathe out. So it's really conscientiously thinking, I'm going to bring the breathing all the way down to my belly instead of using our chest. Yes, and I'm seeing it's surprising how many students, even high schoolers, do not belly breathe. It's so weird because you see newborns and we are born as humans breathing with our belly, and then somewhere along the line we stop doing that. And when
Oof.
you talk to someone of like, use your breathing, they're like, what do you mean? I breathe all the time, but it's a different kind of breathing.
Oh, Aria, you are speaking my language now. So I'm a singer, and so my
Hmm.
whole
Okay.
life is surrounded by the diaphragm and diaphragmatic breathing, and I also teach singing.
Okay.
And and bringing like diaphragmatic breathing back into people's lives, not only are they a stronger singer, but they say that they can see better and see more clearly, and their energy just like from the beginning of the lesson to the end is
Mhm.
dramatically different. I tell my son, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth 5 times, and this consciously tells the body to slow down.
Yes.
Yes.
It helps your nervous system slow down. It also distracts your mind. It's a mindfulness technique because now you're focused on your breathing and whatever is stressing you out. Um,
I like the color. So
yeah.
people are doing kind of
So,
color coordination based on emotions. For my
oh,
youngest
I
daughter, we have a
love
pink
that.
brain, which is a healthy and fun brain. When she's overwhelmed and anxious, she has a blue brain. When she has a black brain, it's really bad, and we do talk about it and see what's going on and try to get her back to a safer spot in her brain.
Oh, I love that. I love that because then it's really putting it on, the it compares it to our physical health. It gives it a like a tangible way to describe it. I love
Mm.
that.
That's the hard thing with mental health is sometimes it seems invisible,
Mhm.
and especially for children, since the verbiage isn't there yet,
Right.
and the color matching with these change in emotions and change in
Hmm.
mental health so huge.
Hmm. And a lot of teachers use the color zones in the classroom to describe the emotions too, because it is an easy way to say, okay, I'm in this zone, the blue, yellow, red. Um, and kids can give it a visual. So here on the screen, I have ways to teach the really young kids how to do the diaphragmatic breathing because, of course, you can't teach a 2-year-old breathe with your belly quite yet. So this is something I do with my 2-year-old. We will do bubbles when she's really upset. So that way you can't blow a bubble if you're not slowing down your breathing. So helps fun, distract, but also helps her breathe. We also, you can do smell the flower and blow out the candle. So right now, sometimes when she's really upset, if I tell her, can you do a deep breath for me? She gets mad at me. So instead I say, can you blow out the candle? And she will blow and slow her breathing down. And you guys are jumping so ahead of me about Inside Out. I do have something on Inside Out later, and I love that you're bringing it up because I use it in therapy all of the time. So I will hold that thought for a little bit later.
Never apologize for bringing up Inside Out.
Exactly. So more colors. Green is good, yellow is alert, red is usually kaboom. So he knows to let us know when he enters the yellow to prevent red. I love that, right? We have to help children find the middle. I have parents tell me they go from 0 to 100. We got to find the 50, right? So I'm in green. Uh-oh, I'm starting to get in yellow. And then I'm in red. And yellow is important to help. That's where those physical cues are important because kids can start telling me, oh yeah, I can start to feel my heart's beating faster, or I am starting to clench my fist, my cheeks are starting to warm up, and those are signs that I'm starting to go from yellow to red. I need to take a break. I wanted to also, in addition to the breathing exercises, add progressive muscle relaxation. This is a relaxation exercise that adults, children, adolescents, anyone can do. You see here the young child version. Um, it is all over YouTube. If you look up progressive muscle relaxation, you will find nice guided scripts. And so I have that on here. On Our Sleeves has a YouTube channel with relaxation exercises. The Little Children Big Challenges by Sesame Street is an app for really young children so that you can help the monster breathe by tapping on his belly. Headspace and Calm are more for adolescents and adults to help with mindfulness and meditation. And then YouTube again has lots of videos. And one thing I added on here is distraction. Sometimes our children do not want to calm down, do not want to take that breath. And the more we ask, like, hey, let's take a breathing break, or let's, they're going to get mad at us. And so sometimes the best thing that we need to do is get their mind off of whatever's bothering them. You know them best. You know what they like to do for fun. And sometimes we have to plan ahead. I know that my daughter gets really stressed and anxious at the doctor's appointments. So now I'm packing snacks, toys, books, coloring, anything to keep her distracted and having as much fun as you can have in a long doctor's visit.
My mom was the queen of this on airplanes.
Yeah, right?
Airplanes. She had like 50 different things ready to go. Play-Doh, coloring books. She just loved, and it was the best.
Because the more time you have to just think, the worse you're going to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets me closer to the inside out conversation. So I should have put the summary of part 2. So I'm just going to quickly scroll up to tie that together. We have the people you can talk to, how to calm your body down through those relaxation and breathing exercises, how to calm the mind down, which is distraction activities and it's meditation activities, and then what the parents can do to help. Then we jump to the final part, which is, okay, I helped myself calm down, but there's still that problem there. I need to do something about what's stressing me out. So we have to problem solve. What are the actions I can take to help solve what's going on? Is there something you think could make it better? How can I help you in this situation? So first asking them how they think they want to make the situation better. As someone mentioned earlier, that teamwork. And then, especially for the older kids, asking permission before you jump in with advice. It's the parent thing to want to say, I have so many things to say, but first say, okay, I have a few more questions just to understand more of the situation. Is it okay if I ask you now, or do you want to talk about it later? And then if they say later, you set up a time. Okay, let's take a 15-minute break and we'll come back. I have some ideas. I have some advice for you. Would you like to hear them? And so giving them that ability to say, yes, I'm open to hearing more. And I'm seeing a question popped up on here. What about using videos or video games as a distraction? Where does one as a parent draw the line as what's too many videos or video games? That is an excellent question. Videos and video games are a wonderful distraction. And I think I just recommend that as long as it's not the only distraction, then it's okay. Sometimes I run into children who, when I ask them, what do you enjoy? What helps you calm down? What makes you happy? They can only name the video games. And so I want to make sure that the child has, yes, the video games is something that helps me, but I also like to listen to music. I also like to read a book. I also like to do something else. And so having that variety in the distraction plan is important. We also want to be purposeful about the amount of time. So, okay, it looks like you're really nervous right now. We need to take 10 minutes to calm down. And I know you enjoy watching a video. So you get 10 minutes to watch a video versus go watch a video with unlimited time, if that makes sense. So the answer is always going to be, if it works, do it. We just have to set some limits sometimes.
Thank you, Charlotte, for that question.
To me, this is one of the biggest takeaways I hope people get today. When we feel stressed or anxious, I mentioned that we want to run away from that stressor. Kids who are nervous about going to school want to stay home. Kids who are nervous about talking to others don't want to talk to others. Um, as caregivers, we want to protect them from that stress. We want them to be happy. And so sometimes we keep them home, or it's okay, I'll talk for you, or, try and protect them from that thing they're afraid of. The problem with stress, fear, anxiety, nerves is that the more we let the emotion tell us what to do, the bigger that emotion is going to get. And so we have to encourage our children gently, slowly, baby steps to practice and do the things they're afraid of. So it's slow exposure. It's what we call in therapy gradual exposure. So I mentioned my daughter started having meltdowns since 6 months old when I would take her to the doctor. So I bought this little doctor kit for the home, and we practiced going to the doctor. I listened to her heartbeat. She listened to mine. We practiced with the little shots. And then currently we're working on, we have to go to the dentist on Thursday for the first time. So I started showing her videos of kids going to the dentist. And I think she was like, her face looked like the kids were being tortured. It was like, what is happening to that child? But that's important, right? Because imagine, like, if as a human you had never seen someone go to the dentist and now their mouth is wide open, they're laying down, there's these picks in their mouth. It's a scary situation. So now that she has seen the video, we're going to start practicing, maybe with her dolls, maybe with her. By the time we get to the dentist on Thursday, it won't be as new or scary. And so this is, like I said, for me, the biggest takeaway for parents, caregivers, and adults is to encourage kids to slowly do the things they're afraid of. And then, go ahead, Lauren.
We have another question in the chat from
Yeah,
Christina.
so terrified of shots and nothing has helped. And so that, shots are scary because they are painful. And so we want to try and set up distractions in the moment. There's a lot of research to show that if they're distracted in the moment, they feel less pain. And so watching a video during the moment of the shot, reading a book, something, again, your child best, so something they enjoy in the moment. And then setting up a reward system after, because we know that helps children, get through the hard situation. So we go get ice cream after, you get to pick out something at the dollar store, something like that. For extreme cases of needle fear, there's also something called the Buzzy Bee, I think is what it's called. I think it's about $30 some on Amazon, but you put it on the child where the shot is going to be, and it vibrates. And there's a lot of research to show that vibration kind of distracts the nerve in the brain because it's feeling the vibration, and the kid doesn't feel the needle as much. And then we want to watch our language, right? If we use language like pain, ouchie, it's okay, then it kind of makes it even scarier. So just saying, yep, you're going to feel a little pinch, just being matter of fact, it'll be quick, and distract them. And I'm saying here, short phrases as over talking is, yeah, yes. Yeah, so if we're talking too much or over comforting, that can make it worse. So I do like what Eileen is saying. Yep.
And I appreciate, Eileen, that you have set that with your child.
Exactly.
That you're aware of what they all mean, rather than, I know personally throughout my life, I think I have found these short phrases like, I cannot handle this right now, or like, I'm not in the space to take this in. But it took me 27 years to get there. So
Mhm.
now that you have that, that will definitely impact
Yeah,
getting straight to the point and what they are actually experiencing and
absolutely.
listening.
And so we talked about problem solving. in terms of what do we need to change? What are the things we need to do to continue to battle this stress or fear or anxiety? And then there's the thought piece. So our thoughts come from our emotions. Sorry, the other way around. Our emotions come from our thoughts. So two people can have very different reactions to a situation depending on what you're thinking. If I walk into two people laughing and my thought is they're laughing at me, I'm going to feel pretty upset. But if I walk into that same exact situation and my thought is, oh, they must have told a joke, I'm going to feel curious or happy. So it's all about the perception. It's all about our thinking that then guides how we're feeling. And so this is where Inside Out comes in. We want to help children identify their worry thoughts. Sometimes I call it the worry bully in their head, because that bully can be really mean. It can say things like, you're not good enough, you're going to fail, people don't like you. So it's like having a bully in our brain. And we have to find ways to talk back to that bully. For really young kids, I use Inside Out. I print out Inside Out characters. I print the fear guy, the purple guy, and then I print joy. And I will say, what is fear saying? And what is joy saying back? How is joy calming fear down? And so that allows the really little kids to identify ways to talk back to their thoughts. You can also play thought detective, so looking for the evidence against your worry thought. And at the On Our Sleeves website, we have this thought challenging worksheet that you can download. So that puts that anxiety action plan all together. You go from identifying, talking to your children about it, you go from what steps you can take to the problem solving and challenging the thought piece. And so if you plan that ahead with your child, that's going to give them kind of a hands-on, I know what to do, I know how to manage. And when we feel control, that really helps our stress and anxiety. And the last thing I wanted to put on here is that don't wait till they're stressed, don't wait till they're anxious, build daily habits to manage. Routines and schedules are so important for children. They know what to expect, they feel in control, it decreases power struggles. So try and keep routines, try and keep schedules, and notice there. Ariana, would you repeat that sequence again? Yes. So the sequence, Charlotte, is that printout that you all will get, the anxiety action plan. That part one is identifying what is causing the anxiety and how your body feels. Part two is how can I help my body relax, my mind distract, and who can I talk to and who can help me? And part three, once I'm calm, once I've dealt with the immediate emotional response, is the problem solving. What changes can I make and how can I challenge my negative thoughts? I still sing Blue's Clues when I lose something. I love that. Okay. Do we have time to go into this, Lauren?
I think a quick summary I
Mm-hmm.
think will be helpful. We have about 7 minutes,
Okay.
and yeah, let's
Okay.
get right into it. So, final question: how do we know when it is more than normal stress?
Mm-hmm. So yes, we've been talking about stress anxiety as what we all feel day to day. But sometimes people will experience chronic stress, and this is the stress that happens day to day, nonstop. We're talking about abuse, trauma, violence, systemic racism, discrimination, economic hardships. And all of those things are what we call a social determinant of health, things that increase our risk for disease, it disrupts children's development, and increases mental health concerns. So that's one thing. When that stress won't go away, we worry. Also, there are anxiety disorders. There are times when it isn't just the normal day to day stress, but a child may have an anxiety disorder. So, what this means is a generalized anxiety disorder where they're worrying about a lot of different things, or separation where their worry is about separating from caregiver. A specific phobia is when the worry is about a specific object or situation. The social anxiety is when they have fear about social performance or interacting with other people. And then panic disorder are people who have anxiety attacks or panic attacks, but there's no reason, there's no trigger. It just, like, I could be sleeping and I wake up in the middle of a panic attack. And then that creates a vicious cycle, because now I'm afraid of having panic attacks. And so I start avoiding things because I don't know when a panic attack will come. OCD is also classified as an anxiety disorder. It's intrusive thoughts that you have. That's the obsessive piece where you worry about something obsessively. And the compulsive piece is feeling like if I don't do a behavior, then that bad thing is going to happen. So OCD is not what we tend to see in the media or pop culture of like, I just like to be clean. OCD is a really tough disorder to live with. It means if I don't do a certain activity, this bad thing will happen, and it really disrupts people's lives.
Eileen made another great point. She said, we've been taught to let go of what happened and not ask why, but instead ask, what can you do next time to get a
Yes.
different outcome?
Mm-hmm. I love that. We cannot change the past. And so
Right.
if we stick to our children, like, why did that happen? What, or repeating over and over, I told you not to do it and you did it. That's not going to get anyone anywhere. But okay, this happened. What did we learn from it? How are we going to respond next time? Um, so with anxiety disorders, I don't want people reading this and to start worrying, oh my gosh, do I have an anxiety disorder? Does my child have an anxiety disorder? I want you all to really realize that this means it's almost every day. It is consistent. It is for long periods of time. So when diagnosing, I'm looking for over 2 weeks at a time, almost every day. There is difficulty in daily life. Kids can't do school, kids can't socialize. It gets in the way of extracurriculars. And so it's truly impairing. And it's this feeling of not being in control. And this goes kind of throughout. And we will send these slides so you can spend more time, but I don't want to cut into our time for more questions. I just want to kind of end here, which an anxiety disorder is what we call an internalizing disorder. So we may not always notice that our kids are feeling this way. I can't tell you how many times in clinic I've had a kid start sharing because of the questions I ask, and the parent is sitting there in shock. I had no idea you were feeling this way. And so we have to talk to our children. We have to check in with them to see what they're thinking and how they're feeling, and then look for those behavior changes. And I will get to questions and send these out for you all.
Thank you so much for that presentation. We are opening the floor to any questions. We're about to wrap up. You can also add questions in the Q&A, or you can place them as a comment in the chat, whichever you have. We have about 2 minutes left. So if you have any questions for Dr. Ariana Howitt, please add them in. While we're waiting for more questions, we have this final slide, all of the information to follow Ariana and On Our Sleeves on social media. You can also visit her website at onoursleeves.org, as well as the Youth Mental Health Project. It's ymhproject.org is our website. Our Instagram is ymhproject. At YMH Project. We have a lot of events coming up, lots of webinars, and our week of Children's Mental Health Awareness Week events the first week of May. And follow On Our Sleeves with all of the events and wonderful work that they're doing on their platform as well. This has been one of my favorite webinars. You guys are
Oh,
amazing.
that's so kind.
Yay!
Thank you for everyone jumping into the chat. Um,
Great.
I'm seeing a question. When do you consider medication intervention and how do you assist in ensuring the best choice? What a great, great question. I kind of skipped over my slide of treatments for anxiety disorder, which includes the medication management. You see a little child here with floaties because the example I use with my patients all the time is think of an anxiety disorder or even depression, any mood disorder, as an ocean that you're in. And if you're in this ocean too long, you start drowning, you get cramps, your muscles are tired, you start sinking. Therapy is there to help you swim out of that ocean. Therapy is going to teach you strategies to learn to get out of the ocean. Therapy is not meant to be forever. It's really meant to teach you the skills to swim out. Sometimes we're so tired that you can't learn to swim. You are literally drowning and sinking, and that's where the medicine can come in. Sometimes we need the floaties, which is how I think of medicine, to help you kind of float, take that breath, relax. But I always remind patients that medicine, those floaties, you're still in the ocean. So my recommendation, and this is what evidence shows, this is what research shows, is medicine along with the therapy. Wear the floaties, but then learn to swim out of that ocean. And the combination is sometimes what's best needed when the symptoms are really severe.
Beautiful. And can we finish up with this one last question from
Yeah.
Christina? What recommendations do you have for starting therapy for a 9-year-old with either GAD or SAD? Anything I can do to help prepare her?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I'm looking here. So for generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm guessing the SAD is for social
So,
anxiety. Um,
or seasonal affective disorder, possibly?
so for anxiety disorders, we recommend either cognitive behavior therapy or exposure therapy, which is this avoidance hierarchy you see in the
Social.
middle. Those are the treatment therapies that have the most research and evidence behind them to help children with anxiety. So the first step I would recommend is when you're looking for a therapist, ask them, do you do cognitive behavior therapy? Do you do exposure therapies? Um, and then preparing your daughter. So checking in, asking questions, of what is a therapist. So the therapist is here to help you with those worries that you've been having or those fears that you've been having. The therapist is here to help you come up with new things that you can do to help you fight against those thoughts, fight against those behaviors. I like to tell kids that therapy helps them do the things that they want to do that their anxiety isn't letting them do. So I often start therapy by asking that, like, what would you do if that anxiety wasn't holding you back? And then explain to them how often they'll be going, explain confidentiality so they don't feel afraid to speak up and answer any questions they may have.
I think we answered all of the questions in the chat. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to email us. Um, and again, we will be sending the recording of this webinar as well as all of the downloadable materials that Ariana has shared with us today. And we so appreciate you all joining us. And Dr. Ariana Howitt, thank you so much for all of this information. It's been extremely helpful. Thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you. Thank you, everyone.